Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. You know, lifetime can be such a fun adventure, and it can start with some things that may not appear to be all that great. As an example, the pandemic is an example, because a lot of people got shut down in their house and they couldn't do the things that they normally do. And then suddenly they think to themselves, okay, I got all this time. What am I going to do? And then they say, hey, I am a photographer and I work with women all the time and I love working with women. Why don't I, do a podcast? And I don't know, we'll call it EMPOWEROGRAPhy, and we'll empower, elevate, and educate women of all types and stripes. And because as he so aptly says, that this is not a old boys mentality or club mentality. We need to shift that way of thinking and change that. Women are just as capable, if not more so, than men. And his name is Brad Walsh, and I happen to agree with him 110%. And so, Brad, welcome back to the show. How are you, my friend?
I am awesome, and I am just so happy to be here in your presence, Kevin. It's always a pleasure chatting with you and being on stage with you. I love it. You are an incredible human being that I am so grateful to know and be connected to. So thank you for having me back. I appreciate you.
You, sir, have what's called carte blanche. You know what that means?
Yes, I do. I do. And I am honored to have that, and I will be taking advantage of that.
Anytime you want to come on and we can talk about women, which happens to be one of my favorite topics, and
There we
also
go.
the work that you do with some of the folks. Now, I have been very fortunate because you've interviewed first of all, your podcast has 580 some odd episodes, which is really, from knowing from experience, that's a lot.
Yes, and you've got quite a few under your belt as well, so let's not downplay that either.
Well, certainly not, but this is about you, and so it's
It's about both of us, Kevin, come on.
and that's true.
I think we're past that point of formalities and whatnot in our relationship.
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think so because
Yes.
you are really the people you've sent me, and my audience has really enjoyed, like Havala, and she's going to be on the Brushwood Media this next
Oh,
week.
awesome.
Yeah, and all of them have been just remarkable human beings, and they
To live up to. I mean,
it really is.
I heard that you are tracking a friend of mine's journey across Canada when she comes to the country from Australia.
I am. I'm so excited about her coming to. She's in Australia,
Yes.
and I'm excited
Yes,
about her
mate.
coming here, and she's going to spend time in Canada. Yes, yes, mate. And when oh bloody hell, But anyway, so she is really a remarkable lady, and
Yeah.
all of them are, and
Yes.
all of them are interested in making humanity better for everyone, and not just women as well.
No, I mean, I think that we need to shift the perspective globally in terms of just being a good human. I found that, I mean, in my community, no, this isn't an issue, but I found through conversations that we as humans struggle with the concept of being a good person, of being a good human being. And I know that's what you are, and that's part of what you're all about, part of what I'm all about. It's all tied into my mission, but I've I'm perplexed as to why we as a human race still can't get this right. Like, why do we struggle so much with trying to be good to others? Why is this such a hard thing to do? It doesn't cost us anything to be kind to another human being. So why do we struggle with it so much? I mean, I guess we could say part of it is Conditioning, societal conditioning, religious conditioning, whatever that conditioning is, those all play part, but and our experiences, of course, but it's not hard to be kind to someone, and we need more of that in the world.
I've been getting edumacated a lot lately about about that very issue,
Mhm,
because what I'm finding is people are taking in many parts of the world and even
mhm,
here,
mhm,
people are taking advantage of other people because they can, not
mm,
because it's the right thing to do, but
mhm.
because they can. I'll give you a quick example.
Yeah.
I work with somebody out of the Philippines. She is a
Mhm,
dynamic woman,
mhm.
and she does a tremendous job for me. And I worked with a company that she works for,
Yeah.
and I was actually we were having a meeting, and I was talking with her, and I get this email from them saying, "Well, we're cutting out this benefit, and we're cutting out that benefit, and we're cutting out that benefit. If she doesn't work, she doesn't get paid, and all that kind of stuff." Now,
Mhm.
keep in mind that she works in another country,
Yeah.
and so the average pay is a lot lower than
Right.
what it is here
Mhm,
anyway. And
mhm,
so they were going to take more from her, and she has to pay her own taxes and has to pay her own medical because they can, not because
mhm,
it's the right thing to do, but
mhm.
because they can. And I'm sorry, but I cannot deal with that
No,
type of mentality.
no, it's not right. You know, I think about this a lot. It's like you walk down the street and you see a stranger, say hello, give them a smile. You never know what that can do for someone's day. You could completely change the trajectory of their entire day just by something as simple and as easy as saying hello or smiling at them. It's
Y
very easy.
you no, you're right, and then now you know that I drove a bus for 12 years, don't you?
Yes. Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, and, what I found is I made it my mission to
Mhm.
say hello to everybody that would get on the bus.
There you
And
go.
you just like, "Hi, how are you? Nice to
Mhm.
see you." Something, just something. And
Yeah.
occasionally, somebody would walk by me and I'd say, "Hey, how are you?" And they'd turn around and go, "What'd you say?" Because they're expecting something negative to come out.
Right, right.
And the other thing that I noticed was probably about 20%,
Mhm.
25% maybe responded back. Most of them,
Wow.
because they don't expect it, and they don't think that that's possible, that somebody could actually be nice to them, that
Mhm.
they just walk on by. And, because that's what we're trained to do, and I would really like to change that because life
Yeah,
is a lot more fun when you can be kind to other
absolutely.
people.
But how sad is that when you think about that? Only 20% of the people responded back, and they did that because they didn't think or they're not used to something like that. So I guess when that happens, we just have to keep doing it to get them used to it, to make that a staple. When we see people, say hello. I go out on walks every single morning, and I'm out usually about 6:30 in the morning. And if I see people walk, I'll say hello. How you doing today? Or just smile or say hello and smile and go about my day. And everyone says hello, and it not only it not only feeds their soul, feeds mine too, because
Oh,
it makes me happy to hear that someone has responded back and says hello and possibly I've brightened their day.
oh,
How
yeah.
amazing is that?
It is a gift that, by the way, costs nothing.
Yeah.
But it's a gift that can actually transform somebody's day and
Mhm.
perhaps even their life.
Yeah, a gift that keeps giving.
Exactly. Because and I get it. Somebody's in the audience going, all those 2 guys are just Pollyanna, and they don't get the real world and what it's really like, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Mhm.
no, we do, and
Mhm.
I get the fact. I will be in line at the grocery store,
Mhm.
and I will watch the cashier and the person in front of me or the 2 people in front of me, and
Mhm.
oftentimes, they won't exchange a look, a word, anything between them. Now, this
Mhm.
poor person has been on her feet for 6 or 7 or 8 hours
Yep.
and has been used to people not treating her nicely the
Mhm.
whole time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I make it a point of saying, "Hey, how you doing today?" And and they say, and most of the time they'll respond,
Yeah.
and with a, And I said, "Boy, how's your day going? You got a
Mhm.
tough job." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh boy, you have no idea," you know. And but
Yeah.
we're bringing humanity back into the
Exactly.
human experience.
Exactly. And that yes, I make a point of that too when I go into a store, whether it be a grocery store, whatever. Hello, how you doing? How's your day going? Of course, why not? They're human beings too, and they do have rough days. We all have rough days. And so that disputes the Pollyanna thing. We all have those rough days. But I think that if we keep that mindset of putting positivity out into the world instead of being negative and being pissy and angry, and what good is that? Who does that serve? Least of all, it doesn't serve you because all of that emotion's kept inside and you're miserable. And that energy radiates out from you.
The only issue that I have these days is when I'm driving, and then perhaps you can help me with that because, there are it's like, but at the end of the day, when somebody does something silly
Mhm,
and, and gets in my way or whatever that is,
mhm,
um, it makes me feel badly um, when I bark at them or when
mhm.
I don't ever give them the one finger salute anymore. When when I was a kid, I did, but not
Yeah.
anymore.
No, I try to not let that get to me. I'm human, of course it's going to. But I try my best to just, well, you don't know what kind of day they're having. Maybe they're having a shit day or, you know, but I try my best to not let that get in my head and bother me. Because and also on the other side of it, it's like if I get all pissed off and get elevate myself and my emotion and all of that stuff, and I start chirping and mouthing off, you don't know what that person, you don't know what kind of day they had. You don't know what they will do. You don't know if they have something in their car that you have no idea what that person is going through at that moment or on that day. So what's the point of that? You could end up getting yourself into quite a bit of trouble. So
I've
I
I've
just try
I've
my best.
I've been there,
There you see? There you go.
and it's one of those things you just kind of you learn from it. But yeah,
Mhm.
now one of the things, do you listen to NDEs at all, which are near death experience stuff?
Oh, I've interviewed a few women that have had those, yep.
I
Mhm.
had one person that I talked to, and they said that during her NDE, they did a um, a life review kind of thing
Oh,
where
okay.
you the entities on the other side, they give you a life review and stuff,
Mhm,
and they said, "Well, this is the best thing that you did in your whole life." And he
mhm,
said, "Oh, I've done a lot of things. I've given to charity and I've
mhm,
been a kind employer and stuff." And they said, "No, it was when remember the time when you saw a young lady who was on a park bench crying
mhm,
and you went up and sat next to her and said, 'Are you okay?'"
mhm.
That changed the entire focus of her life, and that was one of the best things that you did that we are so proud of you for doing. So
So
it isn't the big things, it can be the small things.
that's right. I remember it was last summer, I think it was. I was at a grocery store and, I was getting in my car, put my groceries in, and I noticed there was an elderly woman walking around the parking lot, and she had both her hands just carrying groceries. And I thought, "She looks lost," and everyone was just driving by, walking by, not paying her any mind. I thought, "This is horrible. That's someone's mother, that's someone's grandmother, possibly." Like so I went over to her and I said, "Are you okay? Do you need some help?" And she said, "I'm lost. I don't know where my car is. I can't find my car." And this poor woman was carrying around both her hands with grocery bags. Well, give me your grocery bags and we'll walk around. We'll try and find your car. She could not remember where she parked her car. I must have spent about an hour walking around with her. We finally found it, which was great. But it's just like, what does it cost you? It doesn't cost me anything to help this poor woman. It took me an hour of my time. That's so what? It was well worth helping this woman find her car and to not have to walk around dragging grocery bags around with her. It's something that simple that just is human. It's a human thing to do. So why wouldn't you? But so many people are just driving past, walking past her, not paying her any mind.
Being a bus driver, I got to see some really unique things.
I'm sure you
One
did.
one one of 'em was I was at the stoplight in downtown Seattle, and I
Mhm,
looked to my right, and there was a man who was on his back, lying down, wasn't moving, and it was a busy street,
mhm.
and people were walking around him, people were walking over him because if there were too many people, but nobody stopped to say, "I wonder if this guy's okay." And it's not like he had a pillow or he didn't have a sleeping bag or anything like that. He was just lying there, and it's like, what are we doing? What kind of humanity do we have here when
Mhm.
we don't even look out for the least among
That's
us?
hor People were actually stepping over this gentleman. That is
Yeah,
horrible.
but they didn't. Well, I got an appointment. I'm busy. Oh, here's this guy. Okay, jump over. You know, it it was it was like, "Oh, Lord." Is it there are times when you'll do something that other people there was a here's another story. There was a
Mhm.
guy, he was passed out in a bus stop,
Okay.
and I drove it was in on my route, and I drove past him, and he was
Mhm.
passed out,
Mhm.
and, so I drop my people off, and then
Mhm.
I'm headed back to the base, and I go back to the same place. He's still in the same position. So I called it in, and I said, "There's a guy in the bus stop, and he is not moving, and he's passed out."
Mhm.
And so they said, "Well, we'll send medics, stop the bus and stay with him."
Mhm.
So I stopped the bus, crossed the street, and went to where
Mhm.
he was. And the lady rolls down her window, and she's getting into because she was in the turn lane to go to the grocery store. And she said, "Oh, that's just Tim. He does that all the time." It just it just kept on driving. It's like he could have been dead for all we know.
Yes, exactly. And you don't know what how do we get to this point in humanity that I'm trying to wrap my head around people stepping over this gentleman who was lying on the ground.
Yeah.
How what what led us here? Why wouldn't someone stop? And part of it, I believe, is that we're so caught up in our own lives and we're so focused on what we have to do. We're not thinking about other people. We're thinking about ourselves, and that's it. And that's not why we're here. Part of why we're here on this planet is to help each other, to support each other, to cheerlead each other, to lift each other up when we need a hand. So stepping over someone when they're lying in the middle of the sidewalk, come on.
Well, and here's another story that I just have to tell you.
Yeah,
And it was another bus driving story because I got a billion of them.
I'm sure you do.
There was a go to a bus stop, and there's a guy sitting there, and he's
Mhm,
kinda rolling rocking back and forth a little bit, and
mhm,
right behind him is a 6-foot ditch with water in it,
mhm,
and it's about 45 degrees outside, so it's not very warm,
mhm,
and so I stopped the bus, and he doesn't move, and I said, "Oh, did you wanna get on the bus?" And he says, "Yeah." He's had too much to drink, apparently,
mhm.
and, so he starts to get up, falls over backward into the ditch,
Oh, no.
and so of course, the bus was stopped, and so I called it
Mhm,
in. Man fell into a ditch. I'm gonna go help him out, and please call the medics. And so it took me a couple of minutes to get him out, and so I go back to the barn after the medics come and they take him to where they need to take him into
mhm,
the hospital. And I'm standing there talking to several other drivers that are
mhm.
like. And I say, this is unique, and this is what happened today, and stuff. And they said, "Well, why'd you stop?" I said "What?" And they said, "I would have just kept on driving."
Of course you would've.
So it's like, how jaded must you be, in order as a human being not to look at, the least among us? And even if he had too much to drink, I don't know about you, but there have been times in my life where I
Yep.
may have had a little
Y
bit too much to
Yeah,
drink.
1 or 2 extra.
And I so I can relate but it's amazing that people would because I asked like 4 or 5 bus drivers, "What would
Mhm.
you do?" I kept driving. I wouldn't have called it in. I would have just kept on driving and said he was in a ditch and it was in like 6 inches of water, and they said and he couldn't get out. It's
Yeah.
like, "Well, oh, somebody would have come along sooner or later." It's like, "Oh, come on. Really?"
Oh my God. That's when I think about that woman that I helped out, I just thought, this could be my mom. This could have been my grandmother. And I would really, really hope that someone would help her if she was struggling like that. I really would. That's
You
it's
know, one of the
mind-boggling.
it really is. Well, one of the problems is that people won't even notice. They don't even
Mhm.
look up to see, you were aware enough, because 'cause you're an aware guy.
Mhm.
You were aware enough to see that somebody was struggling
Mhm.
and were able to make that decision, where a lot of people are like, "Oh, geez." They have
Yeah.
blinders on, they look down, they don't
Mhm.
wanna know. I just
Mhm.
don't wanna know any of that stuff, which
Mhm.
is terrible.
It is, but then, I think about if the other side of that, if you see, let's say, a group of people or a couple people on and I hate thinking about this, but picking on someone or bullying them or beating them up, do you get involved or do you stand back or do you just walk away? Do you risk something happening to you? Because you could end up, let's be honest, depending on the situation, you could end up dead. So do you get involved in something like that or do you walk away? That's always the thing that I think about in my head. What would I do if I came across a situation like that? Maybe the answer is calling the police, involving the police or something. But do you jump in and help a person? You don't know what happened before that led to that. So it's a very tough line to walk, I think, in terms of that type of stuff.
It really is, and, I don't know, have you ever been confronted by that situation?
No, I have never, thankfully. Touch wood. Touch
Me
wood.
neither. Now in school, there were kids that were mean to other kids, and I
Hmm.
tried to stick up for
Right.
unless unless, of course, I was the one being mean, but that's a story for they deserved it, doggone it, so by the way, we're talking with Brad Walsh. I want you to go to his website and his podcast, which is EMPOWEROGRAPHY, podcast.com. Find out all about him. He also, if you decide, we're going to talk about this next little bit. If you decide that being a podcaster is fun and I'm going to make $100 million, you need to call him and his podcast services because he'll help you, but he'll also kind of, set you straight. We need to take a break. We'll be right back.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and I just wanted to wake you up with that piece of music because I can. So there. But we're talking with Brad Walsh. He is a podcaster. He is a photographer. He does a lot of really cool stuff with women, and he also does podcast services. And so,
Hmm.
if you really would like to explore the avenues of podcasting and how you can make it your own and make $1 million like Joe Rogan or $1 billion, whatever I don't know what he makes. And
Tons of money.
tons of money, but his show's not that good. I'm sorry, that's personal opinion. Sorry,
Hey, personal preference.
but 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 my son likes him better than me, so I don't know. Anyway. Um,
What does he know?
I know he's just a kid. He's only
Ex
36.
Yeah,
Uh,
he doesn't know.
he hasn't been around long enough.
That's right.
But if somebody comes to you, you can help them in all kinds of different
Mhm,
ways. Put their podcast together from
mhm,
editing to
mhm.
voiceovers to
Being a guest, all of the things, but I love that you brought this up. I wanna talk because I know you can speak to this as well. Um, I think people jump into podcasting thinking it's going to be this, as you said, skyrocket to fame. I'm going to be this big visible person and personality, and I'm going to make all this money. And I'm sorry to burst the bubble. It doesn't work like that unless you're already an established personality in the world, like a Joe Rogan or someone of that nature. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I think that you shouldn't jump into it thinking it's easy, because I can tell you with 1000% certainty, it is not easy. It is not easy. It takes a lot of work, which I know you can back me up on, as you've podcast host, radio show host, you know what this world's all about and what it's like and how
It
hard it can
is.
be.
Well, you know what the hardest part is that you can't quit. You
Mm,
can never say, "I don't feel like it today,"
mm,
and stuff, because you've got a schedule and you've got people
yeah.
that are gonna be coming on, and then you have to edit it, and then you have to do all of those things to make it sound right. And also, podcasting or radio show hosting is an art form that you do
Mhm.
very, very well, and I like to think I do okay
Thank
at it
you.
too.
You're amazing. So don't even worry. Don't start that. Don't
I'm
even go there, Kevin.
I'm just being humble. But there are, like I tell people that want to guest on a podcast, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
It's and there are people that are very, very gifted, and there are people who are just starting out and they're
Mhm.
learning, and it
Yep.
takes time.
Absolutely. I think you have to look at it, look at the long game. You can't, like I said, you can't jump in and think, oh, I'll get my show up, I'll get 1 million listeners, and like I said, you can get that, absolutely, but it takes work and it takes time to build that following and to build the trust of your audience. You have to be consistent and all of these different things. And I think this is a big part of why people pod fade is a real thing,
That's right.
right? And they say that usually what happens is after, I think it's anywhere from 7 to 10 episodes, a lot of people just end up giving up because they didn't realize how much work it takes, how much time you have to put in, and how much work you have to put in. So they just figure, oh man, this isn't nearly as easy as I thought it was going to be. I'm done. Forget it. And that's why there's more than 1 million inactive podcasts in the podcasting index. And so people, this is another thing, is that people jump into podcasting. So they're looking and they see that there's 3 or 4, I think there's over 4 million now in the podcast index. And they see that number and that scares them away. That's a deterrent. But what they don't realize is there's not 4 million, over 4 million active podcasts. Now, when I say active, that means 10 or more episodes that this person has put out, and they're still putting content out. So people get deterred by that number and think, oh, forget it. There's too much competition. I'm not going to do it.
Well, and you're right. 95% of podcasts produce less than 25 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there are people that have 500 or 600 or 800 or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because we're committed to it.
Yeah.
And it really is a commitment. It's not, I mean, because the first podcast I did, I called my mother and she listened, and my sister and she listened, and I had 5
Mm-hmm.
listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So I had 3 people I didn't know, and I was excited. 3 people. Wow. And
Yes.
yes, I've got some people that I don't know were listening, and but it takes time, it takes consistency,
Mm-hmm.
getting good guests and
Yep.
treating them well and having a
Yes.
good time, and there's a lot to it. But if you want to go down that road and explore
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
Brad would be a great one to do that with.
Oh, thank you. I love that you mentioned treating your guests well, because I believe that is the foundation for a good show, is the rapport and the relationships you build with your guests, and vice versa. As a guest, you also need to focus on building and creating and sustaining that relationship with the host or with the guest, depending on whether you're the guest or the host. But I think that the relationships are the foundation of it all. That's the building blocks. You have to form a connection with the host and with the guest, and vice versa, the guest with the host and the host with the guest. That relationship doesn't end once the show's done, or at least it shouldn't. In my opinion, it shouldn't. You should continue that relationship, because you never know what it could lead to. As a podcast host, we know podcasters, so we can connect you as a guest with other podcasts to
Yes.
get yourself out there. So that's why it's important, in my opinion, for the guests to build that relationship and keep that relationship going after your episode has been released. Keep the relationship going. It's the key. Relationships are the key, 100%.
Oh, exactly. And although I do have to say, I know you've done a bunch of these, and don't give me any names or anybody, but have you ever had a guest on that is not used to a conversation style?
Oh,
And
yes.
so what they do is they go and they continue, and they go
Mhm.
and they go, and they're not necessarily interested in creating a conversation.
No.
I've had people listen to some of my shows and go, why wouldn't he shut up?
Or it could go the other way, where
Yeah.
it's like pulling teeth to continue the conversation. It's like you ask them a question, they'll give you a 2, 3, 4, 5 or 2-sentence answer, and you're looking for a little bit more. So you try as a host to kind of further engage that question and keep the conversation rolling about it. No, it's crickets. And I've had more of those than the ones where you can't stop that train from rolling.
Yep. Years ago, I had a feng shui guy. If you're not
Mhm.
familiar with feng shui, it's energetically way of setting up your house and stuff. And he wasn't really. I'm sure he was just wonderful at setting up your house, but he couldn't
Mhm.
describe how that worked. And so it was like, how does feng shui work? Well, it just does.
That
And
isn't the answer I was looking for.
no, I would like to build off of the
Yes.
response so that we could move forward in a real positive way with it. But some people gotta love them. They're not cut out to do this.
Yeah, and see, and I love that we're talking about this, because this is something that I believe, and I tell people that want to work with me, is don't jump into wanting to host your own podcast. Like, that's a totally different skill set as opposed to being a guest. Both have their challenges, and both you need to work at. It's two different things. It's like apples and oranges. You need to hone your skill set on both sides. But I think that, and what I suggest is that you start as a guest. Learn how to speak using a microphone, learn how to engage in conversation before you jump into hosting a podcast, because that's a whole different ball of wax.
I'd like for everybody to listen carefully to the way Brad speaks, because if you'll notice, he doesn't do a lot of or or you know what I mean, or or he doesn't do those sorts of things that we all tend to do just to fill time, so that we don't have to come up with a word, or we're trying to come up with a word, and so well, and so that's a real skill set, and I think it's an underappreciated skill set.
It is. It's hard. You have to be conscious of it. And there are times where I've caught myself doing it, or I've listened back to something. Even when I'm interviewing as a host, I've listened back to episodes. It's like, oh, it's painful, and it's more work for me editing, because I have to cut those out, right?
Exactly.
So, and I would love, because I have so many guests that do that a lot, and I would love to just say, stop with the ums and ahs. Be more aware of how you're speaking. But it's a skill set. It's a practice skill set, and you have to be aware when you're doing it. You have to see that you're doing it. Not
I-
hear that you're doing it. Sorry.
the best way to do that is to replay what you just did, because a lot of times it's like, ooh, gal, I did that. Gee whiz. I thought it was clean, and it turns out
Yeah.
it wasn't even close.
But yeah, just to be aware. I mean, but I tell people that you should really be a guest first. Get yourself out there on as many podcasts as you can to hone that art of conversation, because it is an art form. Holding and having a conversation with someone is an art form. So learn how to speak with people, learn how to listen, which I think is the most important piece of all of it as a guest and a host, is learning to listen. I think it's a little more important for the hosts to learn to listen, but it is almost equally as important as a guest to listen, because you need to pick up on those cues of when to speak, when to shut up. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. Now, when we come back, we're going to take a station break. But when we come back, I want to throw into the mix the co-host idea of two people being on a podcast and a guest, and talk about the art form of that, because that's
Yeah.
really can be a challenge, and for most people, I've met that challenge, and I have had that happen a lot with people who have been on the show. We're going to take this quick break, and we're talking with Brad Walsh. If you go to EmpowerOgraphyPodcast.com, find out all about him, subscribe. That would be great. His platform is just wonderful, and I really appreciate it. So we're going to come right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We have got I have to tell you, Brad, you're one of my favorite people of all time.
Well, thank you. You are one of mine as well. So I reflect that right back at you.
Well, that's good. We got a couple of mirrors going on, and that's just
we do.
It really is fun, but I got to tell you, there are times when somebody will say, "I want to co-host with you," and I'll say, "Okay, well, we'll give that a shot and see what happens." But you said the magical word, which is listening. Everybody has to listen, and in order to do that dance between two people that are co-hosting a show, they have to play that well and to know that dance and listen to where the other person is going. I've had co-hosts not too distant past where it would be like, "See, Mitch, what do you think?" And I'd have to call them into and it's like, "Well, I hadn't really thought about it." It's like, "Oh, criminy sakes. You got to think about these things and to understand or to prepare the material that we're doing." But it's also having a great co-host can be a wonderful experience for both the audience as well as each other, because we can play off of each other and work with the guest as well and come up with things that the other person hadn't thought of that really make the conversation more interesting.
I love in a conversation when we're talking about something and it just leads to another point and it just goes off in another direction. I really love that when that happens. But also I think being able to, as a host, being able to rein that back in and bring it back around so that you can continue on the original conversation is another skill set that is not easy to learn. See, I did it. Now that you put it in my head. See, I'm aware though. I caught myself.
Exactly. He's now aware of the and I do it unconsciously, and sometimes it just comes out that way. And I don't edit it because I like to prove to people that I'm not perfect.
I do. I remove the ums and the ahs as much as I possibly can. I take 99% of them out because I just don't want them in there. But then again, editing is a whole other skill set and a whole other ball of wax. But speaking about the guesting and the co-hosting experience and getting back to listening, I've found that a lot, I won't say everybody, a lot of people think that they are good listeners. There's a lot of people that think they are. And that's not always the case. You can think you're a good listener, but I found that a lot of people listen to respond, just to respond back to you. They don't listen to actually take in what you're saying, think about it. And speakers, public speakers use this phrase all the time, and there's power in the pause. It's okay to have silences. It's when it gets to lengthy silences where it's that uncomfortable silence. We don't want that, but there is a lot of power in that pause and in the silence when it needs to be, finding the appropriate place for it when you're speaking or interviewing or talking to someone.
Well, I think you're absolutely right because whenever I used to be a sales manager and I would go into like a restaurant with my salesman and we would have a conversation with the chef or the owner or whatever, and he would
Mhm.
have a spiel. You should buy from us because this is why, this is why, this is why. And then they would wait, and then the owner would speak. And rather than listen to what the owner was saying or the chef was
Mhm.
saying, they would think about the response that they were gonna come up with to counteract what they thought the guy was saying, but they
Mhm.
weren't listening well enough to really comprehend it rather than saying, "Okay, so what I think I heard you say was," and then repeat that, they just
Mhm.
go off on a tangent, and then the chef just kinda they don't have a long, attention span anyway, so they just kinda wander off.
But it's almost like you can see in their eyes, you can see the wheels turning as you're speaking with those people who don't really listen, who are listening to respond. You can see
Yeah.
that those wheels are turning and they're figuring, okay, this is how I'm going to respond to this. No, just listen to what the person is saying. You have to listen when when you're in a conversation. That's part of the art of conversation, is being a good listener and really listening to what they say, taking it in, thinking about it, then formulate your response.
Yes, and for all those sales guys out here, here's sales 101. When you ask a question, stop, wait for an answer to fill space.
Yeah. It's not, it is an art form. It really is. Interviewing, knowing how to speak to people, knowing how to hold a conversation, knowing where the pauses go. All of these things, it's an art form. But you can learn it. It is you can, I won't say it's easy. You can learn it though through practice.
But now I wanna ask you because your, empowerography is
Mhm.
working with women and empowering women. Was that when you decided was that like an angel came down and tapped you on the head with the wand and said, "You're going to empower women, and so you're gonna have a podcast?" Or what was your process to get the podcast going and decide on the niche that you were gonna focus on?
It was a progression out of my photography work, actually, because my photography work is about women's empowerment. So it's actually, yeah, it was kind of like a download. Like the name of the podcast was, it just came to me. I thought empowerment. And since I'm a photographer, let's tie the two together and create a platform. So someone said to me a couple weeks ago, like, you like to make up words. I'm like, yeah, I kind of do actually.
That's funny. But you do but it's a wonderful program, and it's a wonderful
Thank you.
podcast that you do, and the women that you have are just where do you find them all? Because 'Cause they're just dynamic.
Well, let me go back to what we were saying first. And then, so it did come to me. It was just a natural progression, I think, because of the work I was already doing. I thought, why not take the values and the purpose and the mission of that work as a photographer that is empowering women through the lens, and transform that into a podcast. that is solely focused on women. And as a man, I didn't know of any other platforms out there that solely focused on highlighting, amplifying, and elevating women through sharing their stories. So I thought, this is perfect. I'll carve out my own niche. And that I did have that intention of carving out a niche and standing out, because as you know, as I know, as podcasters know, even entrepreneurs, you have to do something that's going to make you stand out, make your brand stand out. You got to do something different from what everyone else is doing. So that part of it was conscious, but it just kind of progressed really from the photography. And so, in answer to your other question about where do I find the women, when I first started out, I was just going through social media and scrolling through profiles on Instagram. Instagram was the platform I was using primarily. So I would scroll through and find interesting profiles of different women that were doing really interesting things, and I would just reach out to them. I would send them DMs on Instagram. Some I would get back and hear back from. Others would be like, I'm sure they were thinking, who the hell's this guy? What? What? I don't even know this guy and he's messaging me. So now I'm at a point where it's all referral. Women who I've interviewed are sending me connections, connecting me with their friends. And so unless there's someone that I really want to connect with, or if I'm scrolling through social media, happen to be scrolling through and I find someone's profile that's really interesting, I would love to have her on the show, then I'll just reach out. But primarily now, thankfully and luckily, and I'm so grateful for this, is that I don't have to anymore. I've gotten to the point where I don't have to go looking for guests anymore, which is an incredible gift to be able to have. It's an incredible problem, we'll call it, to have, that I don't have to go looking for guests. That all of my previous guests, well, not all of them, but a lot of my previous guests will send me friends. Like I've gotten emails from women that I had on the show last year, a year ago, and they'll send me a referral out of the blue. Here's a woman I think would be a great fit for your show. So it's gotten to that point, and this is exactly what I mean. And I know you can attest to this too, is keeping those relationships alive with those previous guests. You have to, because this is exactly what happens, is they refer people to you. They get to know you, they know who you are, they know what your brand's all about, they know what your show's all about, whatever it is, and they'll happily refer others to you. That's the importance. That's the key, is the relationship piece. And that's why you need to keep those relationships going.
And they feel very comfortable because they know the experience will be positive.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And
100%.
that's what's really cool. And you are an amazing you're an amazing interviewer, and
Thank
working
you.
with those folks. I have an associate who keeps telling me, "You need to niche down. You need to niche down." I can't. I don't know why, but it doesn't work for me.
Why do you have to, though? Why?
Because that's what everybody else is doing. That's what everybody else is telling you to do, and that's what
Well,
everybody
then
does.
shouldn't you run the other way then?
Yes, I can't help it. That's what I'm doing.
There you
Um,
go.
I love to interview all kinds of different people, and
Mhm.
authors and musicians and poets and people that are climbing mountains and doing all sorts of wonderful things. People that have a great podcast. I enjoy an interview and working with, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot. It's for
It
me.
is.
It is just I love it. I love it every day that I get
It's
to.
everything. I mean, even my discovery calls, I love it because those conversations inspire me. When I
Yeah.
hear what these women, the things that these women are doing, it's like, wow, this is incredible. I pull inspiration from every single conversation I have. Those conversations fuel me. They light my soul on fire. They fill my heart. And listen, not every single conversation is that. Not every single one that I have is just, wow, I can't, like, this is amazing. It fuels me. It inspires me. Not every one of them is like that. And that's okay. There are going to be ones that, but I would have to say the majority of them are that. I walk away, I finish my day, if it's been a day of interviews or it's been a day of discovery calls, or 99.9% of the time, I finish my day feeling incredible because of what I've learned about what someone's doing, or how they've inspired me, how they made me feel through the conversation. That's the feeling you go for. That's what it's about, is getting that back from who you're speaking with.
And you're going to educate me here in a moment, because I do a 15-minute meeting with people that I can never do in 15 minutes. So I guess I'm lying to people when I say let's have a 15-minute, pre-show, and then I can't. I've spent as long as an hour talking to people that I do this. So I'm gonna,
Mhm.
when we come back from this real quick break, it's only 30 seconds, so calm down, and we'll be right back because I'm going to ask you, how long are your pre-interview interviews? We'll
Okay.
be right back.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
Talking with Brad Walsh. He is a podcaster of note. He's also a wonderful photographer. You go to his website, which is EMPOWEROGRAPHY podcast.com, and learn all about him. Brad, I'm struck by that commercial that I just played, because that's never happened to me in my entire life. That I text somebody and they responded back, "Sure, I'd love to go on a date." That ever happened to you?
Nope. Never.
The magic of radio. They can make
Yes.
it seem so real.
Yeah, and so easy.
That's exactly right. Speaking of easy, I know you do the same thing I do. We have a pre-show show kind of thing, and I can't keep them at 15 minutes. Do you have a set format? Are you
Yes.
able to keep it together?
I have a 30-minute. I do a 30-minute.
Oh, okay.
And see, I did it again. And I started off by, I want them to share. It's about them. It's not about me. Sometimes they will ask me my story and how I got it. Well, I should say more often than not, because women are intrigued. It's like, how the hell, how did you land in this world? How did you end up starting a podcast that empowers women? A man? What? So there's that curiosity piece of it. But half an hour is the time limit I set. And yes, of course, sometimes they go over because the conversation is just so amazing and it's flowing and it's good that, yeah, I've had 1 hour discovery calls when I have the time in the calendar to do that. But I set them at half an hour. And I would say 90 to 95% of the time they don't go over half an hour. But there are times where they do. But I really try my best to keep it under half an hour, to also be conscious of their time as well, because they're giving me their time. I'm giving my time. And we have to be aware of that. We have to be conscious of other people's time too. So, but if it's flowing and it's going and I've got nothing else going on after it, sure. If the conversation keeps going, then absolutely, I'll stay and talk with them longer. But half an hour is usually the cutoff.
And I think you have the same philosophy about doing a podcast as me. It's not about me getting famous. That has nothing
No.
to do with it.
No.
It's about the information that I can bring, and my job is to provide the biggest platform I can to interview these people that I think are just sensational, that will impact the world in a positive way.
Yeah, for sure. It's our job as hosts, whether it be radio, podcast, whatever it is, I think anyways, my biggest responsibility is to provide an experience for my guests that they feel seen and heard. That's the most important piece, is that they feel seen and heard during their interview. And listening, again, speaking about listening, I want them to walk away from an interview with me thinking, holy shit, that was the best interview I have ever had in my life, or that was an incredible interview. I felt so heard, like the whole Brad listened to what I was saying. That's what I want them to walk away. I've had women walk away leaving the interview saying, I have to go journal. I have to write because of what you brought up. You brought stuff up that I haven't thought about in a long time. And that's what I want all my guests to walk away feeling.
And because of that, what you're doing is people that are listening, and it's not our job to determine who's going to listen and when.
No.
Somebody else is responsible for that.
That's
But
right.
there are people and entities and guides and angels and stuff. They'll
Mhm.
make sure that if it is a topic that this particular person that's listening needs to hear, they'll find their
Mhm.
way to the podcast.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. It isn't our job to the how is not our job, or the who's listening out there, that's nothing to do with us. Our job is to provide that experience for our guests so that they feel good about what they've shared and to walk away from that. We don't it's not about us. It's about them and it's about the others out there that we're trying to impact through sharing the stories. That's what it's all about.
And given that, I think I've made a terrible mistake. So I need your advice. Um, I work with the Brushwood Media Network, which is a
Mhm.
syndicated digital network, and they're heard worldwide. Matter of fact, I got a thank you note from somebody in Asia with their
Wow.
there was a teenage daughter and an older teenage daughter and the mom, and they said, "We love your show. Thank you for making us laugh." And
Amazing.
and that was from Asia, and they listen to it in the morning because I air at midnight at night, which is
Right.
in their time zone in the morning. But
Yeah.
Brushwood wants to do some billboards, and they want me to put my face on a billboard, and it's going to be I live in the same area code as the SeaTac Airport, which
Okay.
gets 194,000 people visiting per day. And so they
Please
want
don't tell me you said no.
no, I said yes, but now I can't go anywhere because
Why?
the billboards will be up and my picture will be there, and then people go,
So what's the mistake? I don't understand.
I don't want people to know who I am.
Oh, Kevin, come on. That'll expand your listening network. Who cares?
Well, that's true. That's true.
That's the
And
way you got to frame it and look at it. You'll be able to reach a wider audience. 194,000 people a day coming through Seattle. They'll check out your show. The billboard's right. That's incredible. Congratulations. That is massive. I'm proud of
and
you.
well, thank you. And also
You deserve it.
well, thank you again. Well, with the Brushwood Media, I've told you how many listeners we have, didn't I?
Not lately. You told me a while about it, the stats a while ago. Let's hear the latest. Tell me, tell me, tell me.
In April, Brushwood Media alone, not counting all the other things that I'm doing, and I'm doing a lot elsewhere, it was
Mhm.
1,071,000 for the month.
What? Listening to your show.
Listening to my show,
Amazing.
1,071,000.
Congratulations. 1,000,000 people. How did does that not make you feel incredible,
It
honestly?
it makes me feel very humble, and it makes me feel very responsible that I don't suck on any given day. You
You
know
don't
what I mean?
suck, though. You can't suck. You're amazing at what you're doing, so you can't. I think that is absolutely incredible. I am so happy to hear that. Congratulations. You deserve it, my friend. You really do. For all the work that you put in, you absolutely deserve it.
Well, and I appreciate that, and the same for you. If you ever decide you want to, I know people now, so if you want to get on the Brushwood Media Network, we could talk. I-
Sure.
I'll
I'd
have
be up
my
for a
peeps talk.
conversation.
I'll have my peeps talk to your peeps, and
My peeps is me. I don't have people. I'm not of that status.
I don't either. And but I had a nice
But it
conversation
sounds
with.
good.
Yeah, it does. It does.
I'll have my
I
people call yours.
Exactly. And, sadly, young man, we have to wrap this up. I can't
All
believe how
right.
fast these hours go.
Well,
Um,
it's always fun chatting with you. And what do they say? Time flies when you're having fun. So there we go.
exactly. So, how would you like to end this? Anything you'd like to tell our audience before we go?
Don't ever doubt yourself. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Look at what you just started with Brushwood Media this year, correct?
Right.
2024. You
Yes.
have 1,000,000 people listening. That is evidence right there. If you've got something you want to do, go after it. You can do it. Put in the work and do it. Believe in yourself. That's it.
And never quit.
That's right.
And because if you quit, you're defeating yourself. But if you
Yeah.
do it, you can do it.
Yep.
So, Brad Walsh has been our guest. EmpowerographyPodcast.com is where you go. And if you want to be a podcaster, he can help. If you want to get your picture taken, he can do that too. I've got to go find a photographer to get a better picture of me, and with a lot of work that they're going to have to do.
No, 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 no. I'm not
At least
buying that. I'm not buying what you're selling, Kevin.
at least I'm genuine. So, Brad, thank you so much for being here. It is, and you're going to be, like I said, you have carte blanche, and we're going to do
I'll
some
be
stuff
back
together.
oh, yes, we are. We
I've
are going to
talked-
do that co-hosting thing.
Yes, I've talked to some people
Okay.
that you've worked with, and I said I want to invite Brad into my world more so, and they said, "Oh, that would be awesome. That would
I'm
be
there.
you guys would have a
You
great
know
time."
I'm there.
I know you are, and so am I. So, and I've been waiting years, I tell you, years.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And everyone have an outstanding day, regardless of where you are, whether it's night or day. Have a wonderful time out there. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at kmmedia.pro.